Sure. If you've got an extra one, that's. Oh, then no. Then I don't need a hard copy. That's
Wait,
okay.
Julie's
Thanks.
gone, right? Julie's gone. Tim, you sit up here with us, or?
I'm okay in the cheap seats. Okay, we'll call the meeting to order, and we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We'll go ahead with roll call.
Dr. Dave Bardo,
Here.
Dr. Noel Deep, Wayne Gagnon,
Here.
Jill Maddock Nelson, Andy Mary,
Here.
Mary Neufeld,
Here.
Danny Pyatt,
Here.
J.D. Schrader,
Here.
Angel Zimmerman,
And we'll go on to public comment. No one signed in? Okay. And then we'll go right to the auditor's presentation. And Amber Danielski.
That was. Okay, is that good?
Yeah.
If I give feedback, just let me know and we'll go from there. My name is Amber Danielski. I am the audit partner for the school district's audit for the year ending June 31st, 2021. And so I'm going to go through the executive summary document. It's a staple document in the back if you have the bound copies, otherwise it was uploaded as part of the agenda. And this document summarizes a lot of stuff that's in the bigger document, but I do have the full financial statements available if you do have questions on those items. So turning just past the page, or the table of contents, this executive summary talks about our audit opinion, internal controls, any findings we had, and just some brief information on your fund balance. So our audit opinion was that your financial statements are fairly stated. We issued what is known as a clean opinion. And this is what the district strives for every time part of its audit. We test a sample of transactions from everything from transportation expenses to construction expenses to revenues, just on a sample basis. We don't look at every single thing. We go to a risk-based audit, but based on the tests that we did, we didn't find anything that we considered to be materially misstated in your financial statements. As part of the audit, to determine where we want to do our tests, we look at your internal controls. And while we don't do enough testing to make opinions on your internal controls, if we do spot that there's concerns or areas that there's just some deficiencies in there, we are required to point them out. For this year, we noted a significant deficiency, finding 2021-001, preparation of annual financial report. This finding is one that's been repeated in prior years, and it's one that a lot of districts have. Basically, the financial statements are the responsibility of management to prepare, but for cost-benefit purposes, the district outsources that preparation to its auditors. Districts smaller than you have that finding, districts bigger than you that have that finding, even counties and villages have that finding. So it's not unusual, but it is important to note that that is something that is done and that there's additional review that's done by your management team before the report is issued to review and make sure that the information that is in that document matches their records. Any questions about that finding? The next part is your compliance findings. As a part of your audit, because you receive over $750,000 of federal funding and to spend that much or more than that in a given year, you have to have a compliance audit. And then the state also has additional areas that they make us look at. And as a result of our testing this year, we did have 3 findings where we thought that the district could enhance its documentation and probably clarify some of its procedures to maybe make things a little bit more efficient. The first 2, 2021-02 and 03, had to do with your child nutrition program on the federal side. The federal government has various requirements for its procurement and how you pick your vendors to provide your food service, to provide the meal, the actual food, the milk, the bread, all that kind of stuff. And so they want you to follow certain guidelines. And over time, they also update those things. So they update certain thresholds that then determine what you're supposed to do. And our recommendation, based on what we looked at, is that you probably could use review of those procedures that you have in place and just make sure that everybody's up to date on what the latest changes are, and make sure it just gets documented, that there's a trail, so whether it's us or the federal government or DPI, if they come in, they know what's there. The other one, the last finding, had to do with pupil transportation on the state side. The state requires us to verify that the district has documentation that a student did ride, because that's how you get your aid, is as long as they rode once, you get aid for them. And there's just some missing documentation for that, so we just discuss with the district to work with your bus company to enhance the documentation that's kept. Especially when you outsource and have the separate company doing that, sometimes things get lost in the shuffle. So just work with your bus company and get a little bit more documentation maintained here at the district. Any questions about those findings?
Tim, I'm just curious, are we claiming every student who could ride the bus, or are we claiming students who do ride the bus?
So Andy, that's one of the findings, the specific details. And historically, we've worked with Mallettes, and last year was a great example where we, because of COVID, we dropped our ridership significantly. You know, we went to about 20 to 25 students on the bus for each route. So we worked very closely with Mallettes doing that. What Amber is asking us to do is to actually get closer to the source. The drivers really know best who's on the bus, and they would like the drivers to verify that, in fact, every student rode. In round numbers, in 2019-20 school year, we had approximately 1,300 students that we claimed for ridership. Last year, we were below 700. So, you know, it's on a weekly and daily basis that we're working with them, but we're working with dispatch and with Mallette's management. The auditors are asking us to go one step further and to verify the ridership via the driver.
But the student only needs to ride the bus one time all year to be aided.
Yeah, DPI wants you to just give a backup that yes, this student rode at least once. You know, they don't want you just to take the route sheet that lists, you know, all 20 kids that were assigned and just still pick all 20. They want you to have some sort of record that as long as at least they rode once, you get your money.
That's legal. If we got every kid to ride the bus once, we'd get a whole bunch more money.
State statutes are written in interesting ways. And then summer school's a little different if you ever wanted to claim the transportation with that, but, you know. So overall, I mean, we look at various programs, but, you know, those are just recommendations to assess. I'm sure DPI will follow up with you guys like they do for everybody, but given this year with all the extra funding that came through with the COVID funding, you're not the only district to see recommendations like that. So it's just an opportunity to discuss with your team and also find ways that you could be more efficient potentially. And say just because it's been done this way for the last 20 years, maybe something changed and we're good to it too, you know.
You only wanted to check with the bus drivers once or something. You're not.
What a lot of districts do is they kind of do it once a semester. You know, they just give a roster list to the bus driver at the end of the first semester and at the end of second semester and just say, hey, check off what's written or who's ridden, and then send that to the district to keep for the records on file. Because DPI could come in and actually do their own desk audit of it too. And so then you'd have your support in years where we don't test it. And that's what a lot of districts do, is just like once a year or twice a year. That way you get, in case somebody moves or graduates early, you know, or even bus drivers change, you have some information.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Tim. Any other questions on the audit?
Not to this point.
Yep. Okay, then I'll have a couple little other items to discuss. Your general fund balance grew by $124,000 compared to the prior year, and your total ending fund balance in that fund was $6,977,000, which is in total 24% of your total expenditures. Which, the way we look at that is that means you're pretty well situated, so you have that fund balance covered in case for when you first get your equalized aid months later and your taxes months later. And I'll show a graph of that a little bit later to go into more depth. In terms of the budget, revenues came in pretty much right at budget. They were under by $73,000. And then your expenditures were also less than budget by almost $2 million. Moving then to page 2, there's one paragraph I do want to point out to you. It's under accounting policies. It talks about something in note E, What this means is there was a new accounting rule that had to go into effect and be reflected in your financial statements. The big change that happened with that is all your student clubs, the stuff that used to be recorded in an agency fund, had to be assessed on whether or not it met rules to stay in that fund or if it should move to your donation special revenue fund. And through that assessment, the majority of those balances, and if I remember correctly, all those balances actually did move to your Fund 21 special revenue fund, so you'll see significant differences in your financial statements because of that. And that affected every district in the country.
Why did they do that?
The government, the auditing standard, or the accounting standards, people wanted to get more clarity in terms of making sure the concept that they had was administrative involvement. You know, if you're holding money for others, on others' behalf, which would be the clubs, how much does the district actually determine how they can spend it, or are you being just kind of told and directed on how to spend it? And there's that distinguishing factor in between, and so they wanted it more clear because they felt if the district was actually saying or limiting how you could spend something, or, you know, kind of guiding the students more than letting the students make their own decision, that was more of a district activity than something just held for others. And so the standard people just wanted it more clear, so that way it wasn't as separated out anymore. And it even impacted counties and other governments as well. So this is a big change that impacted. And for those that would have things that still stayed, they wanted you to now be able to reflect revenues and expenses as well. And it's just something that they always want to say brings more clarity, just like every accounting standard that they keep on adding and they want to point out more. So there's a few changes. You'll see some different columns on your report and different stuff like that. And there's a table in the financial statement footnotes that explains the dollar amounts of the changes of that.
Does this include every club or group that's in the school? For example, the gridiron clubs and band boosters and all of those too?
What it includes is essentially any group at the high school or middle school that does fundraising activities outside of parent boosters. Other districts allow parent boosters within these accounts. We still haven't made that adjustment. So something like the Gridiron Club, the Blue Line Club, Center Court, they're on their own.
I got you.
How long does it take to write this book?
It varies, and it depends on the years when they add new standards.
I mean, roughly, is it like 5 hours or 2 or 20? Or?
Anywhere from, I'd say 12 to 20, depending on the year of a new standard or just something big changing like this, or even just if there's something unique to the district going on, like if you refinance enough debt, you know, here you're down to pretty much the debt will be paid off, so it's not as significant. But in years where somebody could be refinancing or taking out 3 or 4 debt issues, it can get long, or OPEB, all kinds of extra stuff will add different things, and next year it'll get even longer. As I'll discuss later, there's a new standard again on leases that go into effect, and so there's probably a good 5 to 10 more pages that'll be added with footnotes on information on lease liabilities and lease receivables if you have them, and all trying to just make it more clear to the reader what's really outstanding for the district in terms of its activities. So moving to page 9, this page gives you your total revenues and total expenditures by fund for the current year. So you had $30.4 million of revenues in your general fund, $29 million of expenditures, and then you transferred out $1.1 million to other funds for debt service and long-term capital projects, which is what then led to your net change of $124,000. Your debt service fund, obviously you paid down, you made an extra payment on the debt service, so there was only $5,000 left going forward to pay towards the final debt payment. Your long-term capital projects fund at the end had $858,000 in it. Those are the amounts that DPI says you can only spend on what's in that 10-year capital project plan, and you have to wait the 5 years before creation or after creation to spend it. The donation fund, that's where all those clubs, whether it was, you know, Spanish club, French club, or whatever else had it in there, that's where all that stuff got moved to, and that's if you do compare to the prior year, there was an extra $100,000 of revenues, $100,000 expenditures because of that change, roughly. Your food service fund also had an increase of $29,000. A lot of that came from with the federal government giving you the higher reimbursement rates because everybody was eligible. There was just additional revenue that came in from that perspective. And your community service fund also had an increase of $200,000 almost. And we've seen that at other districts as well, where because of COVID, you couldn't operate all your programs, so you just didn't spend all the levy in one year. So at the end, your total fund balances were just under $9.5 billion when you add up all your funds together, not including your OPEB trust fund that's separate. Moving then to page 10, this shows the top graph shows your total general fund balance over the past 5 years, and you'll see that total has just been just below $6 million to up to $7 million over the past 5 years, so staying relatively steady. The different components can vary by year, but you've been relatively steady over the past 5 years for your total fund balance. The second table shows your food service fund, and as you can see, that fund has continued to increase over the past 5 years. Any questions on this page?
Amber, would you mind talking just a little bit about the components of the balance?
Sounds good. I can do that. So for the general fund, there's 5 different components, and those 5 different components can actually happen for any fund, not just the general fund. And so the 5 different components describe different levels of restrictions on it. So for non-spendable, that fund balance means that you've already spent it for future years. So like a lot of times it's your property tax or your property insurance. You've prepaid it for next year. Or you could have a couple other things along those lines where you've just prepaid conferences or prepaid health insurance for the next year. Your restricted category, that is when DPI or somebody else that gives you money says, hey, you can't spend it on anything except for this. So it's been restricted by third parties. And so a lot of times that can end up being grants, that can end up being your common school library fund. If you don't spend all the money, DPI restricts it. Or in your debt service fund, it's restricted for debt service. So then if you have committed funds, that's a little less seen. It does fluctuate from year to year depending on what the board assigns or commits. But this is more formal resolution saying, hey, we're going to set this aside via resolution that you can only spend it on this. Assigned is more tentative. There wasn't a formal resolution. Finance can set aside it or other things, and sometimes that can be for, hey, we just didn't get a chance to finish this tennis court project before year end, so we're going to set that aside for next year, or stuff like that. Or sometimes people set aside money for compensated absences or just that kind of stuff, or you need to balance the budget. Your unassigned fund balance, that's the stuff that's truly for cash flow purposes or unanticipated expenditures, and that's the stuff you use to cover expenditures until you get your final equalized aid payment and your taxes payments in from the county and the village or the city, and allows you to have those categories. And it gets shown that way, so that way the reader can understand, hey, yeah, we might have $6 million, but is all of that tied up by somebody else? Or do we have the capacity to be able to mess with it ourselves? So then page 11 then shows through your community service fund. You'll see that this total fund balance has kind of fluctuated over the years, but that can also vary with the community programs that are being offered each year. At the end, you're at almost $300,000 to be spent on future community programs. Page 12 breaks down your general fund revenues and expenditures by source. So your main source of revenue is state sources. So your state equalized aid, per pupil aid, the general transportation aids. So that was 61% of your total revenues this year. Then you had 29% come from property taxes, and then another 8% come from the federal government, and then the rest were just local sources, donations, some open enrollment costs, interest income, and those type of items. Very, very consistent with what we see at many districts your size. Your expenditures, as you'll see at the bottom, you spent 51% of your total expenditures on instruction. With then the next bigger section on your pupil services, your support services, drifting down to getting lower, again, where you would expect to see most of your costs in your general fund being allocated. And then on page 13, this shows your long-term debt over the past 5 years, and you're down to only having $280,000 left to pay your long-term debt at the end of June of 2021. And so that'll allow you to have capacity to assess what you want, or just the certain other funds will be closed out once that payment will be made this year. Any questions on the financial information before I briefly talk about the leases again?
Amber,
Mhm.
on page 1, you listed the ending fund balance, and it represents 24%. So I know that auditors basically look for that percentage, and they usually have a minimum and a max. So where do you guys come from?
We usually recommend somewhere between 20 and 25% of expenditures, and for the reasons I've mentioned before, you don't get your final equalized aid payment until, 10 months into the year, 11 months into the year. You don't get your property taxes in there. I will say that some districts do keep it lower, but then they short-term borrow. The closer you are in that 20 to 25% range means you don't have to short-term borrow, which means you don't have to incur extra additional expense from bond counsel and just paying interest expense and determining how much you need. So being closer to that 25% means you have a little bit more flexibility in how you need to spend, how you can work through.
Tim, what's our policy right now? Like 15? We just have a little more? We lowered it a couple years ago, didn't we? Or is that?
I believe we say a minimum of 10% of unassigned. So looking at that funds that are available for cash flow, we've got about 1.4 million or a little better than that for self-insured dental and health insurance in our HRA. That is restricted, that's included in those figures. So unassigned fund balance about greater than 10%.
And are we greater than 10% of those unassigned? Do you know where we are? I know that put you on the spot.
Yeah.
That's okay.
Yeah, I know it might be in the bound document, but I'm not sure off the top of my head. But I know you're sitting well in that perspective, just allowing yourself to have a little bit more flexibility, especially with the way things are the last few years. It gives you that flexibility to be able to spend when you need it.
Tim, what'd you say? We have so much money right now because we got all that COVID aid? Or no? Is that...
Aside from the recent governor's allocation that we'll talk about later in the meeting, all of the COVID relief money is a claiming situation. So we spend it first and claim it second. But that has definitely helped immensely in covering expenses the last 2 years.
Okay, then I just want to briefly talk about what's on page 14 through 15. It's leases, is what I briefly mentioned before. And it's something Tim and I have had conversations on, and I know I'll be following up with him in the next few weeks on it, just to see if he needs additional assistance or if he has any questions. But with the leases, this new standard looks at two things. It looks at if you're leasing, you're paying the liability, or if you're getting lease revenue in. So if you had, some districts have cell phone towers on their property and they're getting money from cell phone companies or different things, so you'd have a revenue source coming in. Or sometimes on the other side, districts, lease copiers or lease the computers, lease the iPads, lease a variety of different other pieces of equipment, so then you have a liability. This standard wants the district to assess and report those on the financial statements and have additional footnotes so you can see, okay, well, for the next 5 years you might have $50,000 in payments or $100,000 in payments coming that you're going to have to pay, or if you're getting revenue in coming in. So it's just a variety of things where there will be expanded footnotes. And what we've just recommended is make sure you're doing your agreements, that you understand if they could qualify as a lease or not. And that, there are articles on CLA's website about the new standard if you are interested, and that we did summarize some of this here on some steps that the district can take to make sure that they're taking the steps they need to do to be ready for next year's audit, but it will go into effect for your 21-22 financial statements. And with that, I'll open it up for any other questions.
I suppose, Tim, are you reviewing those lease contracts that we have with, throughout the district?
Yeah, and Danny, we've not done a lot of these. We have a service agreement with our copy machine vendor.
Sure.
Technically, that's the only solid lease, but we have to look at things like agreements between the Park and Rec Department for annual use of their facilities. We have to review that lease. What we're doing with the Blue Line Club and the Antigo Hockey Association.
Yeah.
All, even the bus contract to look at the specific language of the lease or the agreement to see if it constitutes a lease.
Okay.
Do you think you'll have to get a software package, or do you think not so many?
Okay, anything else? Then thank you very much.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
And we will go on to board member meetings or legislative report. Does anybody have anything they'd like to report on? And several people are going to session. Then we'll go right on to item B is review proposed 2022 WSA delegate assembly resolutions. And Danny, you want to lead us through that?
Andy, do you want, everybody received this as an attachment. Do we want to read all of this or just go resolution? Is there any questions on resolution 2201? Or
Yeah, and if you just read off the title of
just the creation of it? Okay. All right, so first we have the Safe Harbor legislation, resolution 2201. That WASB supports the passage of state legislation to protect youth who have been subject to child sex trafficking from criminal prosecution for prostitution.
Let me just go back one step and say that you're the delegate for our district.
Yeah.
And so at this meeting, when we're going through these, if we, as a board, would
Well,
decide we
change
want
verbiage,
you to
yeah.
vote yes or no,
Mhm.
we would do that.
Yep.
And you can just tell us how you think you would like to vote on these, and if anybody objects, we'll talk about it.
Okay. Did y'all have a chance to read the rationale that's behind this to support this? I think it came from, I don't remember what school district that this came from. I think this is something that would be well to send to legislation, just in its form that it's written in.
Yep.
Okay. Okay, resolution 2202, annual inflationary or greater increase in per pupil spendable resources. The WASB supports annual increases in per pupil spendable resources for public school districts that meet or exceed inflation. I think, Andy, you've been talking to us a lot and sent us a lot of information about the per pupils, the resources that WASB's trying to support and get behind.
And if I read this correctly, they are just saying that increased spending could come one of three ways, either categorical or through the tax levy or a combination.
Yes. Yeah. Anybody have any questions, or how would you like me to proceed with voting on that at the delegate? Yes?
Yes.
Okay. Turning the page, resolution 2203, funding for children with disabilities. They want to amend the first paragraph of the existing resolution 2.31 to read as follows. 2.31 will read, what they're going to do is insert what's underlined and in italics there, which is via a sum sufficient appropriation. That's the only thing that will change from the resolutions that they currently have. And I brought the resolution book just in case anybody wanted to see them. We can pass them around. We're good? So we okay with sending this yes on?
Yes.
Okay. Resolution 2204, Advanced Learning. Amend existing Resolution 2.37 to add the following language. WASB encourages that schools focus less on identifying, quote, gifted, end quote, students, and more on identifying and addressing unmet learning needs of students capable of high levels of achievement. The WASB further encourages districts to provide a variety of advanced programming opportunities for K-12 students, including acceleration options, and to offer opportunities to individuals such as students from a background and are able to achieve at their highest possible level. So that is just adding to what is currently in our resolutions document.
Can I comment on this one?
Sure.
At the risk of sounding like a proud dad, my daughter's on the school board now too, and she's also on the board for Wisconsin, WATAG, Wisconsin Association of Talented and Gifted Children. And if you look down in here, the up until for the last several years, there's been very little money allocated for gifted education in Wisconsin. States around us are giving tens of millions of dollars a year. We were giving less, somewhere in the neighborhood of $500,000 or less, and they want to double that, which I think is a good thing. You know, it's something that needs to be addressed. So,
Right.
so I just thought I'd bring that up.
Any comments on Resolution 2204?
Accept it.
Accept it? All right, turning the page. Resolution 2205, broadening self-expenditures eligible for state categorical aid and school mental health services. The WASB supports legislation to broaden the scope of DPI-issued pupil services license eligible to qualify for state categorical aid for school mental health programs to include school social workers, school counselors, and school psychologists.
Yes,
Would you say yes? I would say yes. I would.
Yeah.
absolutely.
Okay. Resolution 2206, broadening the scope of mental health services eligible for reimbursement. The WASB supports legislation to broaden the scope of mental health service professionals eligible for reimbursement from the state to include licensed mental health social workers, licensed mental health counselors, licensed mental health psychologists, and community mental health coordinators. Those two kind of went together whenever it was brought to the resolutions committee, and the committee itself separated those two to make two distinct resolutions. Yes?
Yes.
Yes.
Resolution 2207, curriculum and professional training on Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders. The WASB encourages Wisconsin Public Schools to develop an educational curriculum and professional training to teach the history, culture, and contributions of Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders to the economic, cultural, and social development of Wisconsin and the USA. The WASB also requests the state legislature provide sufficient funding to develop an appropriate model curriculum and training package. Okay. Resolution 2208, WASB National Presence and/or National Association membership. Repeal and recreate existing Resolution 5.16 as follows. So they want to take out what's in the resolutions and put in what I'm about to read. The WASB will maintain a national presence and/or membership in a national association or associations, and will participate in and support that national presence and/or membership or memberships when compatible with WASB programs and policies. The WASB urges members to actively participate in and support national presence activities and/or national association or associations.
Kenny, are you familiar with why they're putting this in? I mean,
Go ahead.
we've lost, or we haven't sent in our membership to the National School Board Association. But that's not the only association that can represent us nationally.
Exactly.
And there was just some fallout there that I'm not sure what the details are.
There was a huge fallout in a lot of other states with the National Association of School Boards just recently. And like you said, school boards across the state, the United States, are choosing who best aligns with what their plans and programs are for their state. And that's what WASB is wanting to get behind and support.
Yeah.
As we all know, the legislature has to pass all of this. This is just going to the legislation, and then they'll put their additions or subtractions or whatever they want to on it. So yes on that.
Yeah.
Resolution 2209, Impact Aid. Amend existing Resolution 2.63, Impact Aid, as follows. The WASB petitions the Wisconsin legislature to adopt a joint resolution asking Congress to fully fund Impact Aid as it did from the creation of the program in 1950 until 1969, and will work with our national presence and or national association or associations, omitting the NSBA, that's the National School Board Association, to try to secure greater funding of Impact Aid, including by offering a proposed resolution to omitting the NSBA and inserting a national association or associations, urging omitting NSBA, adding it or them to lobby Congress for a similar increase in federal Impact Aid.
What is impact aid? Any idea?
That'd be a question for Tim, I think. I think you read my mind as I was reading across this.
It's just like the really old 1950 to 1969. It's like
Exactly.
this has been on the books for a while.
I think it's really designed for districts that have lots of federal property or federal office complexes, military bases, where they have big chunks of their district that are tax exempt because of that kind of federal involvement. And we have very little. We get a little teeny bit of aid from, I believe it's Chequamegon. There might be a part of our district that receives just a small portion. But districts like Crandon and those further north would be involved.
Yeah, Dr. Barto's saying Leon is a district that receives a lot of Impact Aid.
Not enough.
Okay, so what's your pleasure on this?
Yes.
Yeah.
Resolution 2210, Elementary and Secondary Education Act, ESEA. Amend the first paragraph of existing Resolution 17 as follows. The WASB opposes a mandated national test. The WASB will work with our legislators, omitting National School Board Association, and inserting our national presence and or a national association or associations, the Department of Public Instruction, and other education groups to adapt the Elementary and Secondary Education Act.
Yeah, it's just taking
What that
out
is, it's clarifying,
again.
that's clarifying from the National Association of School Boards to aligning us with our national presence or the associations that we are aligning ourselves with. I feel like I'm at church and looking at everybody's
Yeah.
heads.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sure, we're good with that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just want to remind all of us and everybody that's heard all of these, just because these resolutions are passed or at the convention that will be held next week doesn't mean that they become part of the state law, state statute, because when they're passed there, then they go on to our state legislatures. This is what WASB is going to be lobbying our legislatures for coming up.
Was it last year when they did the mascot thing, or was it multiple years ago?
That actually has been a resolution a few times. I think I saw Mike Boldig here. Mike could tell us too.
Did that get
was
passed
Twice,
last year?
yeah.
Did that even get adapted by?
I don't know.
I don't.
Mike was our delegate last year. Maybe he remembers. I know he might have slept a little bit since then.
No, I know what you're talking about, and to answer your question, JD, that probably was on the agenda at the convention for the better part of 5 years.
Yeah.
And every year, it had to do with the Native American mascots more than anything, but eventually that did work its way through. resolutions are just there as the guidance for our lobbyists to go to the legislature and push to have that legislation.
So I'd have to look in that book if I really wanted to know what laws we ended up with.
Yeah, look in the past.
You can look in there.
But I don't want to know that bad.
Okay,
Ultimately, you want to look and see what happened in legislature,
Yeah.
because that's where the final outcome would be. And there's ways if our school district, because some of these resolutions came from districts across the state, and if we felt like that we needed to have a resolution for something for the state, there's a process in which we can go through and submit the resolutions by a certain date. I believe it's by September of the year, calendar year, so then their committee can get on that and decide whether they want to put this forward to the entire state.
What do you think would happen, Andy, if like rural schools tried to do something, or poor rural schools? Do you think we could get a resolution?
can we do a resolution?
I mean, I'm sure we could do one, but do you think the rest of the state would approve it if, you know, it's just a different economic interest?
The resolution here, 22-03, which has 60% funding for children with disabilities, you know, now I would argue that that should be 90%, because that's what voucher schools get. And when you think about, right now we're at about 30%. This means that if we have a kid that has severe disabilities and costs us about $30 or $40,000 a year, we got to have 2 other kids to pay for that. And so we're really stealing from them. And you know, I could argue that we should propose to amend that to 90% and see what an amendment would do there.
You want to go back to Resolution
Yeah,
2203?
let's go back to there and just talk about that.
So what they are proposing is the WASB supports increase in the special education categorical aid reimbursement level to not less than 60% of prior year eligible costs. And what you're saying is to amend that to say not less than 90% of.
Are you feeling brave, Danny?
I'll
You have to
do
give
it.
that a shot?
To represent, I'll do it.
Well, is
Is
So-
that what the voucher schools get?
they could get that much if they want to. The voucher schools get about $13,000 a year per special ed child, and then they can get up to 150%, so about $19,000 a year. And then if they're spending more than that, they can submit documentation and get 90% of whatever it costs them over that. And there's no upper limit for them, if I understand that correctly, Tim?
You just send me all that rationale that you're saying too, so I can,
I can send you that, because Tim just sent it to me.
yeah.
But, yeah, so that's, that, the only problem I have is if we say, oh, we want 60%, we're still 30 or 40% short. You know, even if the legislator said, oh, if that's what you want, we'll give it to you. I don't suspect they're going to do that anyhow. And I would certainly say if you attempt to amend this, Danny, that if the amendment doesn't pass, we would want you to vote for this anyhow.
The way that it says for 60%, yeah.
Do a lot of people try to amend them? That must be a really long meeting.
That's a Mike Bowley question.
And this is my first time being a delegate. Yeah.
They do.
You want an answer?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I'll go up here so you can hear me a little bit. To answer your question, JD, yes, it can be a very lengthy process. General Assembly takes, you know, all the representatives are there. General Assembly, you can amend a motion. First year I was on it, there was one motion that passed, was amended 15 times until the last amendment changed the whole complexion of the motion, and every one of those 15 times had to be backed out. It took 45 minutes for one resolution at that point. So yeah, making an amendment to it at the General Assembly is the appropriate place to do it. And if it doesn't pass, yes, then you can adopt a resolution at your local board and present it to the committee for next year. So it's possible.
How do they count those votes? Everybody raise their hand? Or?
Electronic.
Yeah.
It's very well organized. The WASB does an excellent job at that General Assembly, putting everything together and making it work. And everything is up on a big screen, so not only do you hear it, you can read it, and any amendments that are made are instantly changed on a laptop, and the previous one is saved, so in case they have to back it out, it's a place right back to go to. It's very well organized.
Okay, thank you.
I think we see a new delegate for next year's convention. Okay. Right?
No, I'm
All right,
kidding.
JD.
I haven't gone yet. My wife doesn't like me leaving.
Yeah, and you're attending virtually, Dan?
Yes, I'll be attending virtually due to some work constraints too.
But I know they said that that's all gonna
We
work.
can do it, yep.
So,
I know last year Mike was successful with the virtual, because the whole convention was virtual
Yeah.
last year.
okay. Okay, so that, takes care of that, I guess.
Be sure to give me that rationale behind the
I will
90%,
email that tonight.
so that way I don't.
We probably should at least say by acclamation, just so that it's us saying to do it at 90%. It's in the minutes, in case somebody down there questions it. I mean, we really can't do a vote,
No.
but we can do a acclamation.
That we want to amend from
Acclamation or
60% to
consensus, yes.
90%.
You got that in the minutes there, Mary Kay, that we
Yeah.
have agreed that to have Danny try and amend?
Not that we will not, I won't vote no on the 60%
No.
if we don't get our
Right.
way. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, very good. Then we'll go on to the annual board development tools survey.
It's not there. Ooh, I just lost it.
And Mary Kay, did you have something to say about this? I don't have it scanned.
I did, yes. As of this afternoon, we only had 4 responses. So I'm wondering where to go with this, if you want to continue, if we should extend the deadline, or,
That means at least one of the people here has not responded.
I was one. I must have missed the email. What was the subject heading?
what's that?
What was the subject heading? Was it from
Annual
you?
board development tool.
Then,
I have a confession, I didn't do it.
would you
When was this?
two like until Friday to get this done? Sure.
I'll finish it.
Okay,
I can
so,
resend it in the morning, so watch for it in the morning.
okay,
Now I see it.
When was this sent, Mary Kay?
January 5th, so we haven't been slacking for that long.
It was supposed to be.
it was
done by
actually,
Actually, we've been slacking since December the 14th.
oh,
Okay.
Yeah.
but that's okay. Mary Kay's gonna resend it. You got until Friday to get it done.
Thank you.
Be nice.
Then we'll go on to the Antigo High School band roll trip.
I'm so sorry. It's just a short little outline of everything, a little thing I can bring along. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. All right, well. Can you hear me okay? Okay, there we go. All right. My name is Austin Kappel. I teach band at Antigo High School. Some of you I haven't met since the election, so it's great to meet the new folk on school board. And I brought some stranglers with me, and they're going to introduce themselves quick.
I'm Molly Neufeld. I'm Maggie Neufeld.
And so the sheet that I gave you is just sort of an overview of everything. Thank you. That I wanted to make sure I touched on and that you have information on too. So just if you have any questions at all during any of this, please shout. So wanted to share our fundraising efforts for this trip and share some student experiences. Ask for a donation from the school board for our new marching band uniforms, and ask for a donation from the school board for financial support for the trip expenses. So just to kind of give an overview of the trip for some new school board members, Antigo is now a part of the Northwoods Marching Band, which is a joint band of schools all across this area. It is, I have the list of schools here. It is Antigo, DC Everest, Lakeland, Merrill, Mosinee, North Northland Pines, Three Lakes, and Wausau East. And all those bands are going to be marching in next year's Rose Bowl parade. We got invited by the president of next year's parade. Her name's Amy Wainscott, and she graduated from Northern Pines High School, and now she's the president of the parade next year. And she wanted a band from Northern Wisconsin represented at this parade, and here we are. So that's sort of how the trip came together. We are going to be joining, all 8 schools are going to be joining together. We have a 430-piece band that's going out to California next year, which is just crazy to think about, but it doesn't happen without a lot of support. And some of that we've already been doing, as I mentioned under the fundraising updates. Last year and this year already, we've in total raised about $13,000 that's sitting in student activity account already. Most of these expenses, or most of this money, is going to be used towards the actual cost of the student. These were fundraisers that the students did on their own. They did a Butter Braids fundraiser last spring. They did a popcorn fundraiser this fall. The Butter Braids one was so successful, we're going to do it again in the spring, and hoping to get a good chunk of change there for the kids for the overall cost of the trip. However awesome this trip is, it's not a cheap one by any means. So the next section there, our newly formed band boosters have raised almost $5,000, $4,600, and a lot of that, almost all of that money is going to be more guided towards the purchase of new marching band uniforms, which we are in dire need of. So our current uniforms, they were purchased about 23 years ago. Uniforms made back then should not have lasted this long, and we are in dire need of new ones. On the next section there, so I've been kind of in communication with a couple different companies. The first one there was FJM. They listed us at $530 per uniform. DeMolin Brothers Company is they listed us at $484, and then McCormick's listed us at $260 per uniform. However nice that price point is, the durability of that style of uniform, they make a really thin uniform that's really suited for warmer climates, and not here, as of this past week, is very evident of that. A uniform like that would last maybe like 2 years. So not going to go that route. The FJM companies, however great they are, it's a little pricey for us. So I've been moving forward with DeMolin as of late. A really great uniform. I actually have a sample of it here if you want to. Yeah, so there's the Anago A on the side. We can do some more edits to this too. And then if we want to put like a red robin on it, or Anago marching band on the side, like we can make some edits to this. It's a really durable uniform. These new uniforms are meant to last 25, 30 years with proper maintenance. And then these uniforms are also now machine washable, whereas our current uniforms have to be dry cleaned every so often, and we automatically lose that expense in our program every 2 years. So it's another great option for these new uniforms. Can you walk back up there, actually? So the clips so the new uniforms are made a little bit longer in arm length. So on the inside, there's some clips to where if you have really short arms, that you can just clip them and adjust the size of them so that you don't have insanely too much fabric on your arms. And then the same thing in the pants happens too, so you're not dragging a bunch of material on the ground trying to trip over yourself on the street. So a really nice and clean looking uniform, but also more like efficient and safe for our students. So we really do need these new uniforms, not just for the Rose Bowl to look nice and present ourselves well in front of 1 million people, but also for the safety of our students, and just to present something nice that that can serve our community for another 25 years. So it's a lot to ask of the boosters and myself this year to fundraise money for the new uniform and for the trip itself, but it was really needed, and looking at this is it's so cool, honestly. So so that was kind of where we are with our uniforms. Just talking about some additional expenses we might need. Busing is a big hurdle in this trip. Having 8 schools try to get together at any given time is insane. The only time we have really to get together is in the summer. So it's on our own schools to rehearse during the school year and make it a part of our curriculum this year, so that when we get together this summer, we're going to have 3 rehearsals in June, and then March, 5 parades on the 4th of July, and then we'll have a rehearsal once a month throughout next fall until we leave for the Rose Bowl. So I added in all of that busing below in that bottom section there of some hopefully additional busing funds that we can find. So that is sort of the bare bones of the financial expenses of this trip. If you have any questions about the trip, I'm happy to share. I thought it'd be great for some students to share their experiences. They marched last year on the 4th of July, and just what they're looking forward to this year.
Hi, I'm Maggie, and at the 4th of July parade, honestly, I was kind of dreading it, but then when I got there, it was really cool. I got to meet a lot of other people that are very nice, and it was just a really cool experience.
Working with other bands is really cool because honestly, we're never gonna really team up with other bands. We usually go against them in competitions, but getting to know them and like people with the same interests as us has really been cool because we build friendships with other schools, which we usually don't get to do.
So I mentioned the 2 separate asks for donations just because I know asking for money for trips can kind of be something that I'm sure you get a lot, but needing new marching band uniforms it is kind of a safety thing at this point, because just with all the new additives to new uniforms and not having to dry clean them. But I'm happy to take any questions that you have or what else. Yeah.
Austin, first of all, what's your expected cost of the actual trip? Forget the uniforms.
Yeah, so the student cost per trip is set at $2,500. We're hoping that dollar amount can come a little bit lower than that to sit at about $2,200. We just have not had the chance to book airfare yet at this point, and depending on, we have some money allocated in that $2,500 for airfare, but since we haven't had the chance to purchase airfare yet, we just kind of over allocated for that, and then hoping that we don't have to use all that money on airfare. So hopefully about $2,200 for
expected number of students.
Yep. So we have 56 kids signed up for the trip at this moment. I don't remember the exact math, but it's somewhere around like $120,000 for just the students to go on the trip. Right. It's an insane number, but I think just as a trip, I think some of that should just come from the families that want to go on the trip. You know, any help that I can do, or any fundraising that they've done, like that $13,000 that they've already raised for that, can kind of take a dent out of that too. And having it all be individual fundraisers, that students have the motivation to fundraise on their own for that dollar amount. Right. Mm-hmm.
So when you add the uniforms in here, you're at about 175,000?
Give or take, yeah.
When was the last time you guys went to the Rose Bowl? Was that recent, or am I?
Never.
Oh,
Never.
I did this before. Clearly,
Yeah, so we were actually supposed to march this past parade, but then COVID postponed the parade by a year for last year. So then they essentially had all their bands for 2 years out also pushed back a year. So I think I presented this my first year here, which was 2 full years ago now. But yeah, we just got postponed.
I have a question about the uniforms. so we're gonna get brand new uniforms. Is every school, we're gonna be marching with, what, you said 10 schools total?
Yep.
Are they all gonna be the same, have the same uniform? Is every school gonna have their own uniform?
No, so these new uniforms that we're asking for are specific to Antigo High School.
Okay.
So the Rose Parade has a requirement of at least having a matching shako and plume, which is the hat and the feathery thing on top. We have money allocated in that $2,500 for students for that purchase of the matching shako and plume. So none of this is technically a part of that.
Does band technically count as a class or a club or both? Or how does this work with our policies?
It's a class.
Well, it's a class. It's also an extracurricular.
Band is a class. Marching band is considered a club, correct, Tim? Yeah, marching band is a club. Band is a class. Let me just say something about the uniforms. The uniform that you have there is a wonderful uniform because Carla and I have fought with our current uniforms for 13 years because when somebody needs to have the uniforms adjusted, you have to find a seamstress because they have to be sewn up or let out, and those uniforms are going to be so easy with the snaps that are inside. One of the students modeled that uniform at the holiday concert, and so everybody in the audience got to see how that uniform works. So it would be very nice to have those uniforms. We won't have the $500 cost for dry cleaning those uniforms. They can be machine washed. So the uniforms is a great addition to the band program, considering, Andy, probably, were you part of the boosters when they first got the
No, it was
uniform?
before me.
Before your time. So yeah, 23 years, that's a long time to have those. And they're still they look nice, but if you look on the inside of some of those uniforms, they're showing their 23-year age with things that are coming apart on the inside.
How much money are you thinking we should donate for the uniforms?
That would be a Tim Prunty question.
Well, well, basically,
Always throw money
I have an idea. So I think the fact that our kids are going to be able to go and be in the Rose Bowl says quite a bit about not only our community, but the other 9 that have made this commitment. And I think as a school district, we should make a commitment to the band program. So I'm going to suggest that on the next agenda, we agree to pay $48,400 and buy the new uniforms.
And leave the trip expense to fundraising?
Yes, at this point. And I'm basically saying this not only because I want to say it, but when we just have an audit that tells us we didn't spend $1.9 million, and we added $124,000 to the fund balance, I think we can give $48,400 to make our band look good in Pasadena. So I'm asking that on the agenda at our next meeting to take care of the uniforms.
Is that where that money would come from? I mean, what fund would it come out of if you?
The
general fund.
To start out, yeah.
Because that sounds fine to me. I don't know about funding the trip because if
I didn't say that.
Right, I know you didn't say
I
that.
didn't say it.
So every year the band, how often would they let you go? Theoretically, like there's so many schools. This is like a once in a lifetime chance, or you could go every 3 years or 2 years, or.
I mean, technically, I could go every year, but they wouldn't. We couldn't put this together every year. This is a once in a lifetime thing.
Yeah.
The only thing I'm wondering is, are we going to end up, I mean, I'm all for buying the uniforms. Is this going to come back? Are other clubs and, I know there's a lot of clubs that they don't wear uniforms, but.
Well, I don't think that's, like basketball, for example, the Center Court Club buys the uniforms all the time, right? And so
Is
that's
that how it works in the sports?
Yeah.
With sports?
Hockey, the Blue Line Club buys the uniforms,
Okay.
and balls, and lots of things. And this is, this is a little bigger discussion. If it was me, I would say the school district should buy all that stuff. Because what really happens in the Blue Line Club or any other club is the parents and the students get this little talking to, you gotta sell X number of dollars of tickets of some sort if you wanna be on the team. And I know that if students don't do that, they don't get kicked off the team. I don't know if they play as much.
No, I think it's great, and I think it should come before the next meeting.
But I think it's a bigger discussion, Mary, as you have said. If you're buying uniforms for the band, are you buying uniforms for everybody?
Well, the only thing I can think is that basketball uniforms and, well, hockey would be more expensive. They wouldn't be nearly as expensive, and it's just too bad that the uniforms are happening at the same time as the trip. Like if we would have done the uniforms 2 years ago, and then now the trip, but now it's like everything is happening because, so it's got a big number attached to it.
It's a big number. I don't know, Jake or JD, would you have a comparable price for a hockey uniform compared to a band uniform?
I have not been involved in that. I could find out in a quick hurry.
Tim, is there a way that we can look 23 years ago and see who purchased the uniforms, if the school did, or if it was the
It was the
program?
school.
Yeah, if any of those teams have a uniform that's 23 years old.
But yeah, that's true.
No, I'm not saying that we shouldn't buy these.
Right, I understand what you
Yeah.
mean, what you're saying.
I'm just
Yeah.
making Mary's point there that if
Yeah.
you're gonna do it for some,
Yeah.
should we do it for all?
Do you have a dividing line that we just happen to have money right now and that's very rarely the case? So it's easier to buy things?
Yeah.
That's a good point.
I agree with Andy. We should be buying the uniforms for
Yeah.
everything.
Absolutely.
I don't know why this school district went away from it, but
I think
because
that's
you're
what-
giving other people control over our sports programs.
Well, I think
Yeah.
when they
Exactly. And so I would be one who would say we need to buy everything. Balls, pucks, hockey sticks, whatever.
I think
Well,
when
good,
they
Dave.
cut
I'm
the
glad we
budgets,
agree on
It's maybe the first time, but we're doing good tonight.
I'm sure if you got the hockey coach in here, he'd ask you for a rink. That'd be a cool million. It's
Or more.
We're not talking about facilities, we're talking about uniforms.
we got a band room in the high school and a basketball gym, football field.
I'm not opposed to putting this on the agenda, and Tim, did you make a note that this would be a bigger discussion than just band uniforms?
So what do we gotta do? Get Tom to see if all the sports clubs are gonna yell at him if we do this, or maybe we
well,
don't
you
care.
figure how many would be basketball, 2 hockey, and the hockey, girls hockey would be like cut in half, because it's a combined team. And what else? Swim team, those suits are expensive.
Track.
Tim,
What's-
could we see numbers from these clubs and what they spend on uniforms and balls and pucks?
Yeah, and I mean, we can try to gather what we can in 2 weeks.
Do we buy instruments?
No.
That's in your.
We have a budget. I have the music department budget, and if I feel like I have enough money to buy an instrument, I'll buy an instrument. If I feel like I have a need for a certain instrument, I'll buy that certain instrument. But it's not like I buy X amount of instruments every year just because I have money to buy instruments. I buy instruments I need.
How old are our instruments?
Some of them are new, some of them are not.
Yeah, and even that's like you might buy marimbas and kettle drums, but you don't buy trumpets probably.
No, I do. Like last
You do?
year,
Okay.
so I actually did, we bought a new euphonium last year, a brand new euphonium for, it came out to be like I think it was $3,000. But yeah, so like some of that stuff like we buy. Like I think it was a couple years before I got here, they purchased us a brand new set of 4 timpani, and that was probably like, I don't know the exact number on that, but probably over 10 grand. Yeah.
But like clarinets, flutes, that stuff, the kids.
The kids normally buy some of that stuff. We have a stash of instruments at that high school, and I've been looking at trying to purchase some cheaper ones just because not every kid even has their own instrument. So if I don't have an instrument for them, I don't have an instrument, they just aren't a band at that point, and that's not a great thing, so.
For the uniforms, do we take our high school uniforms and pass them down to middle school?
In basketball?
Yeah, basketball.
Yeah, I think they do in basketball.
I don't think they've ever done that for band.
So, some of the, I know in the past, the hockey has bought the jersey
Okay.
when you're a senior, or some form of purchasing it. I
Sure.
don't know the exact agreement, but, and then they use some of that money to replace.
To replace.
Yep.
Because do they do new uniforms every year or every other year for hockey and football? Those are the more aggressive sports.
Right. I think they try and do a
Jerseys.
rotation, so like
The jerseys.
football, or hockey has 3 color schemes, so I think they try to do one
They rotate.
every other year.
I see.
So the last 6 years or somewhere in there. But I'll get the specifics on that. I'm speculating right now.
Okay. So I think we're gonna have more discussion at the next meeting on that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sounds good.
Well, if I can chime in and just say a huge thank you to all of you. I didn't mean to open that can of worms, or maybe I did. I don't know.
Well, I think it's time.
That's what they all say.
No, but I will. So, did you mention that you're going to throw it on the next agenda for the next meeting? I'll try to get an official or a final quote on an exact dollar amount for the actual purchase. Maybe tax might bring it up or whatever. But I will talk to DeMolin. I'll get on the phone tomorrow and get that final quote before that next meeting. Which when is that next meeting? That would be on
2 weeks.
2 weeks from
2 weeks. Okay, I will have it before then for sure. Thank you again so much. If you need anything from me, please reach out. But thank you so much.
Mr. Campbell, before you go, I was involved with the July 4th parade that we went to all the various communities around. It was a very long day, and I was extremely proud of all of our students. They represented Antigo in a very classy way. In fact, one of the buses for another school broke down, and their kids happened to be able to jump on our bus and be able to transport. And we carried all the instruments in the band trailer. So Antigo was well represented that day, and I was very proud of all of our students.
Where was it again, Danny?
Everywhere.
You can help me.
It was Rhinelander, Tomahawk Lake, Tomahawk, Minocqua, and there was one more.
3 lakes,
3 lakes.
Where'd you guys go? Or where
all of them,
We went to all of them.
in one day.
Yeah, so we started in Rhinelander, went to 3 lakes, went to Tomahawk Lake, Tomahawk, Minocqua, came back to Antigo, and slept.
Wow, so you played all those times.
Yeah,
And it was hot, wasn't it, Maggie?
it was an insanely warm day.
You guys are almost like politicians going in so many parades.
They followed us.
Yeah, no, it was
Followed them.
good.
Okay.
Thanks.
I think we can go on to the next item.
Thanks for your
Thank
hard
you,
work on this.
and thank
Yes.
you, Molly and Maggie. And we will go on to amending the 2021-2022 budget.
Andy, I don't know how much additional information the board members are looking for, but this is a typical publication document that we use. So we're required to publish a notice of amendment in the paper, and this is the format that we use. Essentially, there were really 2 big revenues that we received since October. And one of them was AGR, and that's the one you see under the state sources there for $185,000. And then we had some adjustments in some of the federal grants. So we had a little bit of adjustment in ESSER 2 funds, and then we thought we were going to receive Title V funds, but we later found out we weren't eligible. And then in December, we received the coronavirus relief funds. And so the net there of the federal change was $270,000. So for the bulk of that, we have an additional revenue of $474,000, and then the expenses mirror that. One of the things that's important where you see we've got instructional services and support services. And within those two, in the beginning of the year, as like using ESSER 2 funds as an example, we put the money into a support services function. It's actually, we put it into curriculum development. And it's just one number, one account. It's in the 200,000s. So the difference, the reason you see that big increase in instruction is we've developed the ESSER 2 budget in quite a bit of detail. And we've allocated from that curriculum and development function into instructional function. And that's really the biggest difference there in the general fund. Questions on the general fund? It's really just a housekeeping thing that we want you to know that we've got additional revenues, and primarily we're going to try to spend them on instruction wherever we can. Okay, as we move down the list there, Amber talked a little bit about the Special Projects Fund. Special Projects includes fundraising activities now and special education. And in special education, we can't carry over any kind of fund balance. So I like to keep that. There's some accounting requirements with the federal government that we have to ensure that we're continually supporting the special education department. And so I like to make sure that we're spot on there. And we received a little bit more categorical aid in special ed than I had originally budgeted. And we don't know that amount until we get our first aid payment, categorical aid for special ed. And that usually is the end of October, the 1st of November. So we had an additional, we're anticipating $21,000 additional in categorical aid. And that since that account can't carry a fund balance, that means our Fund 10 support is reduced by that amount. And then we trued up the salary budget in special education, and there were lower salaries than we had and benefits than we had originally anticipated for another 20-some thousand, for a total of $49,662 in reduced costs in special education. Then I just want to point out there weren't any changes in the capital improvement fund, but you can see there we've allocated the cost of the track remodel to that fund. Those were the expenses. So we're just below $700,000 remaining in that account. And then finally, under food service, we had additional expenses in food service than what we had originally budgeted. And Sarah DeBoer has gone ahead and bought some milk coolers and a merchandiser, and I believe for her salad bar, we've got just short of $20,000 additional expenses in those accounts. So those are the amendments that I'd like to point out tonight. And then I'll ask you then at the regular board meeting to approve that amendment.
Okay, any questions of Tim? Okay, we'll see that again in 2 weeks. And we'll go on to the coronavirus grant stipend.
So Andy, as I mentioned back in December, Governor Evers announced that he was going to provide a per pupil allocation from the coronavirus relief fund. And it's a pass-through from the federal government to the Department of Administration. And we received an additional $285,755. And administratively, we're recommending that we use these funds to acknowledge the additional effort that all of our staff have done during the pandemic. Our proposal is that we provide a stipend to all staff members, and it's simply acknowledging the extra effort, the extra work, the extra stress they've been in for the last 2 years. So if it's okay with the board, I'd like to go ahead at least with what we're proposing. So essentially at the top of that document, we have $285,755 available. Under option 1, I'm saying that I'd like to provide a stipend of $1,000 to full-time people and $500 to our part-time. The stipend, again, it's not merit, it's not longevity, it's just acknowledging the extra effort during the pandemic. And under that, you can see that we have 277 full-time and 32 part-time. And then I'm just prorating that amount where you can see where the CRF funds are used per staff member. And then I'm trimming that up with support from the general fund for $1,000. So under option 1, there's a cost there of $7,245 to support to get that to $1,500. And normally when we provide a stipend to anyone, we cover the cost of the employer FICA and then the employer WRS. And you can see there that additional amount, and the total cost then of the support under option 1 would be that $47,000 coming out of the general fund. Then the second option would be if we just wanted to use the additional aid that we received, and then you can see those corresponding numbers, and then I'm proposing that under that option we would take the cost of the employer FICA and the employer WRS out of there, and then you can see the effect of that. Any questions or discussion?
I can just say that, you know, giving a stipend, I think I'd like to see it be a nice round number.
Yeah.
I think everybody likes to get a nice round number. And the staff is certainly, the last 2 years, we can't argue that they've all been doing more than we expected them to do.
Tim, is this like a retroactive payment for those who worked for us the last 2 years?
You know, Dave, the numbers that I'm showing there are just current employees this school year. So it's folks that are, you know, I've included folks that may have retired in between. I haven't gone back and said, oh, which people are we missing from last year? I'm just saying, okay, who's here at the start of the school year up to now?
I guess what I was saying is, are we including first-time teachers this year in the 277? That was my question.
Yes.
Are you opposed to that?
Well, what was just stated was that it was because of the last 2 years and all these, our current teachers who have worked for us the last 2 years, that might change things.
You know, and Dr. Barlow, as an example, this last week in particular, really since Christmas, we've seen absenteeism going way up, both with students and staff. And, you know, in round numbers today, we have somewhere close to 30 people out. We're operating and our staff are just stepping up and covering because we can't find subs to do that.
Okay, just a question.
Yep.
I just wanted clarification.
Yeah, and it is just looking at current staff.
Okay.
Yep.
So that's what I wanted to know.
And by the same token, it's not doing anything for anybody who worked last year but went to a different district this year. Is that correct?
Both certified and non-certified, yep.
Okay.
Okay. So I said we should make this a round number,
Yeah.
so when Tim
I
brings
would
it
say
back.
keep it to 500 and 1,000.
Yeah, fine.
Okay.
But we got to approve it at the next meeting, correct?
Yes. So then we'll go with that motion of 1,500 is what you'd like to see come back.
Right.
Okay.
Andy, I'd like for Mary Kay to show that I recuse myself from this discussion.
Okay.
I noticed it was quite quiet to my mind.
We'll go on to open enrollment special education seats for 2022-2023. Go ahead. If you're Amy, you're
Hi, I am not Heidi, but I will take her place for this discussion. discussion. So in the past years, I know we have not had any open enrollment seats allowed except for early childhood, and that would remain the same for next year as well.
Okay. Anybody got any questions about that? It's pretty cut and dry.
Amy, on this letterhead, are you actually listed on the current letterhead as the director of instructions? Because Kelly's still on this one, so I was just curious if that was Tim's fault.
Oh.
I'm not sure which one you're looking at, but I will take a closer look. Thank you for noticing that.
The auditors have used the last.
Oh, so it's the auditor. Okay, I was curious.
It's always the auditors.
Thank
Good
you for
job.
noticing.
Good job there, Tivis. Collecting that to somebody else. Okay, we'll go on to item H, 10-year capital improvement update, LED lighting upgrade at the high school.
Okay, so this is a project that I've really wanted to do for a number of years now. Obviously, as you can see, it's a big dollar. That's kind of held it off the top priority as far as affording it. Not that we didn't want to do it sooner, but with the release of the money that we've been putting into Fund 46, it's really made it an obtainable goal this year. So that's one of my big projects that I wanted to get out of there right out of the gate. So this is just the high school building, but it is every light fixture in the high school building and on the exterior of the high school building, with the exception of the ball and theater, which we did upgrade that to LED. It must have been 5 years ago now already. But you see, there's 5 members. I actually had 10 people that were looked at, so they were interested in possibly bidding it. Some of them declined, but 5 did submit a number. There are 2 that came out very competitively, and I'm still working through the details. As you can tell, it's a pretty large project, so I want to take my time and make sure that I really hammer down every detail of those 2 bids in particular and make sure that we get the best one. Given the price, I don't know that it's really a question of price right now. It's more of what products they're providing. So I don't have a recommendation between those 2, but they both on the surface look like they are qualified bidders, installers. Easy check boxes are marked. I just really want to drill down into the details.
Last time you told us about this, it was a while ago, like this summer or something. You had some details about the lights, like being adjustable or being.
Yeah. So all of the, I'm going to say classrooms. That's a typical standard classroom as you would think of it. All of those lights will be dimmable, and they will be color selective. So if you are familiar with, sometimes in our special ed areas, we use a translucent blue cover to calm down the lights for them. With this technology, that will be obtainable in every room. Now when you get into a room like this, that technology isn't an industry standard or recommended, but in the standard classrooms it is. So all of those classrooms will have that dimmable and color temperature.
Is there a bunch of energy savings with the LEDs?
Yeah.
Or is it better for eyes or? Keep going.
I think it might be a personal preference on the eyes at first. Some people probably don't like it, but I think overall, I think it's better on the eyes.
You should bring Amy with you and make sure she likes the way the lights look. I mean, the light, physical light. No? She seemed like an extra opinion.
No, we will. We'll have them mock up a couple rooms and do some tests with it before we select what we're going to set them all on. So, average cost savings between the 2 bids, I want to say about $36,000 a year.
So a 10-year payback?
Yeah, they're projecting like an 8 with focus on energy rebate built into that. It would be a little sooner, but I can have those exact numbers on the plan that I'm going to, or the proposal I recommend.
Okay.
But yeah, ballpark $35,000 a year.
Okay. sounds good. Anybody got any more questions on that?
Yes, I do. Of these 5 responses that you got back, now I know Shocking Solutions is, what about that Newton Electric? Are they local?
So Shocking Solutions is a local contractor. I did invite all the local electrical contractors. He was the only one who elected to bid for various reasons.
But is that Newton local?
Yep.
They
So
both are.
Mike Newton is the owner of Newton Electric. They're mainly out of Wausau. They
Okay.
do have a number of employees that are in Annandale.
Did they do the HVAC things in the elementary schools?
They were the electrical contractor for 2 of our
Okay.
projects.
I don't know, I guess I'm always looking for must be raised in a
Yep.
retail, family-owned business. I'm always looking to see what we can do locally.
And that was my sentiment to all the local contractors. And unfortunately, the name of the game when you're talking a lighting project this size,
It's
the,
huge.
the 2 at the bottom just have the buying power.
Yeah.
They're huge companies.
Sometimes companies bid high because they want to submit their bid, but they maybe know it's a big job and maybe they want to,
That does
I
happen
don't know,
sometimes.
that happens sometimes. Okay, now there was something else. Oh, I was going to ask you, do any of the other buildings in the district have LED lighting?
Overall, no. They're-
So what made you decide to go with high school rather than the 3 elementary schools or the middle school?
Because when I first did the initial look at it, the largest cost savings is by doing high school.
Was at the high school,
Is
okay.
is one reason, because of the length of hours that we operate that building.
Okay,
Number 2, with having this big of a price tag, I know I can rely on Fund 46 right now to pull this out of. When we look at years to come, if I don't have that large amount sitting in Fund 46, those are smaller pieces
Smaller
that I can
buildings,
bite out
yeah.
of my yearly budget.
okay. Thank you.
Okay, anything else?
Yeah, first I just want to apologize for stepping away. My daughter was flying back to college. She was just telling me she's okay. But Jake, the question, it just slipped my mind.
It's been there.
You been there?
Been there.
I'm there right now, it looks like.
All
I'll let you come back with it.
Thank you.
Later if you remember.
If you remember it.
Thank you.
But otherwise, we're moving on
Yes.
To the roof thing.
to the next item there, Jake. 10-year capital improvement update, roof replacement at the middle school, partial roof replacement.
Yep, so there's a number of different sections of roof at the middle school, and these are the 2 oldest sections, out of warranty, past their useful life. We do inspections on all our roof surfaces yearly, and these are the 2 that are in most need. Yeah, that's kind of the long and short of it. Again, looking at the capital project plan and having the Fund 46 available really allows us to take some big bites right now, and I think this is one that certainly is necessary.
And are you selecting one of these over the other?
Yeah, I would recommend commercial roofing. I had time to review both bids. They both met the spec. I have no problem with either one of them, so it comes down to price.
Okay.
But I'll be bringing it back for the monthly meeting.
Yep. Any questions on that from anybody?
What kind of roof is it?
Well,
I don't know.
It's
I don't know anything about roofs.
so they're all flat roofs.
Which is terrible.
Low slope roofs. So, basically, essentially, they're flat with roof drains built in, foam built up to create some pitching, and then a sheet of rubber, essentially.
What are you saying, Dave? You wish it was a bigger slant so the snow would fall off?
No, I just, from my years at Whitburn, flat roofs are terrible because ice build up and you're just redoing them all the time. It's like we have like a 4-year rotation with the different buildings and you just, boom, had to do it every time. They don't last long.
Have you looked at putting a peak roof on the middle school?
No, there's pros and cons to flat roof versus
I know.
slope roof.
I just don't like flat roofs from experience.
Yeah, the big downfall with the slope roof is all your water goes somewhere. And to control on a large building, the water that comes off of a flat roof creates tons of problems, both in the summer and the winter.
So you're saying here it goes drains and goes into the sewer or something?
Correct. So on a big building, I prefer a flat roof. On a smaller building, like our elementaries, we do have sloped roofs, but like I said, one way or another, you're dealing with the headaches. It's just whether you're walking on them or finding them on the roof. I mean, it's Wisconsin.
The elementary,
Okay.
the elementary schools didn't have a sloped roof when they were
Correct.
built. They
Correct.
were all flat, weren't they?
Yes.
Yeah.
So we can put extra classrooms up there in the attic?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was my storage space up there.
Okay, want to go on to the last item there?
Asbestos abatement. This is excuse me, primarily in the 3-story of the middle school, and primarily on the south half. This is probably about coming to the end as far as large abatement projects. There's all of our elementary schools, we made it through the last 3 years. We really focused on those, got those taken care of, and this is the last building that has a substantial amount in it. That being said, there are a couple scattered small rooms, like one in the 2-story, one in the old gym area, that I'd look to get, in whenever those floors need to be removed. But as of now, they're in good shape, and we'll leave those for now. But for all intents and purposes, this would pretty much conclude the asbestos tile phase of our district. So, we had walked four contractors, and again, they all seem to meet the spec and have good reputable companies. So I found the pricing. EPS specifically has won the last 3 bids that we put out. They give us really good pricing, and I know they give a good product and comfortable with them. Now, the follow-up to this is I am going to come back for some flooring install for these areas. I have a couple different ideas that I want to do, but I'll get into that later.
So then what I'd like to do is have the board, and I'm not sure how we word the motions, but Jake currently has about $250,000 remaining in his capital improvement budget, so what we have budgeted. And so that means he could tackle the roof in this first phase of the asbestos abatement. What I'd like to do is to be able to have the flexibility. We're using the ESSER 2 and the ESSER, we finished up gear, and wherever we can use the CARES Act money, we're going to try to use it. And I'd like the flexibility to maximize aids by spending any unspent funds within the district and apply that towards the project. And then so we get in the habit of looking at the combination of general fund money and Fund 46. Because I think, Jake's going to come back with another couple of $40,000 or $50,000 worth of work associated with these projects. And we don't want to totally deplete Fund 46. And if we can capture aids rather than build fund balance right now, I think that's a really good thing. So I'd like that flexibility to do that as we go down the road the rest of this school year. Give an example is next week's convention. If everybody goes down to the convention administratively and from the board, that's a couple $1,000. But if we do it virtually, it's the registration fee and it's nothing more. And that's just one example of how we've saved. We're not taking field trips. Our travel expenses are way down across the district. Our mileage reimbursements are way down, and just professional development expenses are way down. So I'm not sure how we would word that, but I think if you approve the projects as Jake puts them out next time, maybe it's using the general fund or Fund 46 would be appropriate. But I'll check with the auditors to make sure we get the language correct.
Okay.
How much did we have in Fund 46 again, and why don't you want to draw it all the way down? You just want to save a little in case we need it in the
I want to be able to consistently, maybe we have that conversation in the spring. We know that if we, the more we expend the general fund, we get aided on that, and we're aided at 2/3. So it really is playing a game to maximize state aid and keep our levy under control.
Tim, is there any difference than if you would take, say, 200,000 out of Fund 46, and then at the end of the year, put 200,000 back in?
We can do that, yep.
It'd be the same.
It's the same exact thing, yep.
What'd you say, how much was in there?
Just shy of, it's in the budget amendment, it's just shy of 700,000.
700, so we can sit in there as long as it wants, we just had to have it in there 5 years.
Yeah. And now we get 8 on it anytime we put it in.
But we could spend it the next year, because we did it for 5 years.
Yep. I just want to make sure we've got the flexibility to do what we need to do and get the aids where we need to get them.
Okay.
The other thing with Fund 46 is if you have money left over in Fund 10 and you figure that out, that you have this amount of money at June 30th, you have until July, I believe it's 15th, to move that money from Fund 10 into Fund 46, and then you're not adding to fund balance.
Can we put as much as we want in Fund 46, or is there a cap?
So JD, again, if you think about what we want to do, I've been a little conservative to make sure that we don't go into the red at the end of the year. Because through the audit adjustment process, we would have been even closer. The audit, if you remember, we had to pull money out of OPEB, and that's why we built fund balance. If we wanted to take just a slightly more aggressive approach, we could set the money on before July 30th. We have to physically move the money before July 30th. And then after the audit, if there's a little adjustment and we're in the red a little bit, we're going to maximize aid without dipping in too far. If we do a one-time deposit, we're going to drop that levy way down and we won't be able to recover the next year.
Okay, thank you. With that, I think, Jake, that's done. Yeah?
Yeah.
Thank you, thank you.
Thank you.
We'll go on to report of employee resignations, and this will be possible action items.
I move the board accept the resignation of Ann Gertz, West Elementary Special Education teacher, contingent upon payment of liquidated damages, and Tammy Newman, food service.
I'll second that.
Any questions or comments on that?
My heart hurts. Middle of the year again. There's got to be reasons for it. Nobody ever resigned in the middle of the year, unless it was a medical issue or a,
Moving away.
so there's reasons why, and it just bothers me. Okay,
Okay.
I'm done.
Then all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? And then we will go on to confirm that the next meeting will be Tuesday, February 8th. Next column.
Motion to adjourn?
Yes.
Second.
All those in favor?